Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Home Study. This is a podcast for parents, especially those who have children through or are considering adoption or foster care. We are here to help you navigate the world beyond paperwork and placement. We have a new episode for you with an interview today. So, Laura, I will kick it over to you to introduce our guest.
We are sitting here with a friend of a friend. This is Kristin, and Kristin is an adoptive mom of three through domestic private adoption. So we are looking forward to hearing about that. But she is also a writer, you guys, and she has several books. We're going to talk about that today. But yeah, so we don't really know much about Kristin. You guys know we love when we can interview someone that we don't know their whole life story because it's just as interesting to us as it is to you guys. So we're excited to learn more about Kristen and her story. Kristen, do you want to just kind of kick us off with like a who you are, ages of your kids, that kind of thing?
Sure. I'm Kristin Taylor. My husband Greg and I have been married for 23 years. I have an 18-year-old named Kate who just started college. I have a 15-year-old boy named Ben and a 9-year-old girl named Rachel. And we brought them all home as newborns through adoption. Um, None of them are biologically related. So, three different processes, different open relationships with their birth moms, and we live in Murray, Kentucky.
Well, Kristen, we're excited to hear your adoption stories. So, if you want to just kind of give us the lay of the land, like go through maybe each of your stories and just share a little bit of, first of all, like how you decided on adoption, what led you to that point, and then just hit some of the highlights of your stories.
Sure. Like a lot of stories, infertility is what turned us to think about adoption. Um, and I kind of had to draw some mental, physical, financial boundaries on the infertility journey. And a doctor told us some things, and I was like, okay, let's be done with this. And my husband agreed. And so we just started praying about adoption. We didn't know what that would look like. I hardly knew anyone who'd ever adopted, but it felt like the right decision for us. About 2.5 months after that mental decision we made, um, we had in that time we had told some people, but we hadn't like done anything. We hadn't done a home study. We hadn't met with anyone. We just kind of told some people. And I was at my parents' house that Christmas, and my sister said, um, "Hey, I know this girl who would like to make an adoption plan. Do you want to talk to her?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll talk to her." But again, no idea what we're getting into. We have some phone conversations and then end up meeting her in person. And less than 9 months later, our oldest daughter was born. It was crazy, and we fell into it backward. We learned a lot.
Oh, that's
um,
wild. So you didn't go
yeah,
through an agency.
so we had a birth mom before we had a home study, and I
Wow.
literally called this agency and was like, "So, we met this woman, and what do we need to do?" Like, I knew nothing. It was crazy. Um, I will say here, like, I know for a lot of families on the infertility journey, like, they really have to grieve not being pregnant or, just all that biological part of it, but for me, I was really freed by the decision just to adopt. Like, I'd been praying for years to get pregnant or, to become a mom or whatever. And I just really learned that God gives us the desires of our heart, even if we don't know what those exactly are. And my real desire was to be a mom and have a family, and God did that. So it was real like peaceful and freeing for me to make a decision to turn to adoption, even though we had no idea what we were doing. So there was that. She was born in Indiana, so we dealt with both states and all the things. But I didn't know it at the time. But as far as adoptions go, it was easy and smooth, and just it was it was just pretty seamless, which was a good introduction to adoption, but not quite what any of the rest of our story was like. So, um, you know how it goes. Um, So when Kate was 2, we were like, well, I guess we want to adopt again. I guess we'll update our home study. We figured that was the place to start that time. And so we did, and we started networking with some agencies. Um, Found an agency in Texas we thought we wanted to work with. So in the meantime, I called our attorney friend who'd finalized Kate's adoption and just said, "Hey, I think we're going to adopt again. We're going to work on adopting again. I'm going to put your name on some paperwork, just kind of get all that ball rolling." Well, we were supposed to leave to go meet with this agency in Texas, and that week our attorney called me and said, "A birth mom just walked in, or a woman just walked into my office and she'd like you all to adopt her baby." And we're like, "What?" Like, I don't know. You have to keep in mind this attorney friend of ours. I mean, he did some adoptions, but he didn't do a ton of adoptions. He wasn't like an adoption attorney. And so that seemed out of the blue. And so we pursued a relationship with her, and she lived right outside our little town here in nearby Murray or whatever. And our baby ended up being born like a mile from our house in the local hospital. It was
Oh
insane.
my gosh.
So and this kind of, we ended up meeting with that agency in Texas, because we'd had the appointment. We were already going on this trip to Texas, and the other situation was so new. We just didn't know. And as we're talking to them, we're like, "This is silly. I don't know why we're meeting with y'all." And they were kind of
Oh,
like, "We don't know why you're meeting with us either. And so second private adoption kind of on accident. Not on accident,
Goodness.
but to our surprise. So,
yes.
yes.
That's
Wow.
crazy. And your daughter
Yeah.
was 2.
She was 2, so like 2.5 when he was born. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Um, and then for various reasons, my husband and I are both the oldest of 3. I don't know, 3 seems like a good number to us. My son seems like a middle child even when there were only 2. I don't know, just it for various reasons, we just felt like we were supposed to have a 3rd child. So, when Ben was, I don't know, 3, 4, we started probably really like 2, 3, we started really, trying to pursue some leads, told some friends, just kinda sorta tried to get the ball rolling again. We met with different agencies, we had, like, specific cases come our way, and for lots of reasons, none of them worked out. Like, things that seemed good for us, just they fell through, all the things. And we're like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe we're not supposed to adopt again." And so we kinda just put down everything. Our home study expired, we just lived our life with our 2 kids and kind of, I don't wouldn't say put it out of our minds, but put it in the back of our minds. And so, um, then out of the blue, um, a doctor friend called us and said, "Hey, I remember y'all wanted to adopt. Do you still want to?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And he was like, "Well, stay on the phone. I want you to talk to this woman." And I was like, "Okay." And so I did, and we're just talking about adoption in general. She's asking questions, we're just nothing specific. We're just talking about adoption. And then at the end I was like, "Well, do you have any more questions? Like, what else can I help you with? Whatever." And she said, "Well, I have an ultrasound appointment next week if you want to come." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I can do that." And so I literally called Greg, my husband, at work, and I was like, I think I maybe just met our next child's birth mother, like on the phone."
Hey friends, if you've been enjoying Beyond the Home Study, there are a couple of easy ways to support the show. First, follow and leave a quick 5-star review. It helps other adoptive and foster families find us. Second, we just set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. It's a simple way to say, hey, I love what you're doing, and it helps us to keep the podcast going. You can check it out at buymeacoffee.com/Beyond the Home Study, or check out the link below. And as always, we're so grateful you're here.
Again, like it was crazy. It had been years we'd been pursuing it. Then we put it on the back burner. So when Rachel was born, my other 2 were almost 6 and 8.5. So there was lots of years of lots of situations that went nowhere. But God just built our family. It was
Yeah.
amazing and crazy, and Yeah. So
Wow.
that's our
I
story.
I just
Family
I
of
love it.
5.
I love how every
Yeah.
single story is so different. Like every every person's adoption story,
Yeah.
how God builds families, like it's all vastly different. And so, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
Of
you
course.
know, I know that the way that God built your family and the way he's authored your story is something you like to talk about a lot, and just the way that he has built your faith through adoption. So could you talk a little bit about that, of just what your faith journey looked like through all of this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I already said, the season of infertility was just really hard on us. It was hard emotionally, just in every way. And so, I've always loved the verses from Philippians that talk about the peace of God that passes all understanding. And like I thought I understood those, but it was in laying down how we were going to have a family that God just showed me what that meant. Because I mean, we had a birth mom, no home study. I had no idea how this was going to work out, but it felt completely right for our family. Um, so I just felt like diving in naively, kind of ignorant about the whole thing was, I don't know, God's way of just forcing me to trust him in it. Um, and then, we have these miraculous stories of how God led us to these different babies, and people will come to me and ask for advice or whatever. And I'm like, well, I mean, my only advice is like, pray about it and talk to people about it, because I mean, you can do all the things and it's not bad to have a home study and it's not bad to talk to agencies. And obviously, lots of families are built that way. But like, the thing God really taught me is just our faith and adoption processes. It's just relational. It's about having these relationships, and all of our children came to our family because of relationships we had. Not necessarily like our best friends, but they were people that knew, they knew we wanted to adopt. And so I know some people like don't want to tell people, and I'm always like, just tell people. Like, you never know what God's gonna orchestrate. You just never know. So, um, I don't know, it just all the whole that whole idea just really built my faith in that God is always working things together. We cannot we don't know what that looks like. We don't know how it's going to happen, but he knows our desires and he wants to satisfy them and provide what we need and want. So, um the other part of adoption that really just built my faith was the parallels between our spiritual adoption and my children's earthly adoption, and just our inheritance, and how we have an inheritance with Jesus and we don't have to do anything for it. Just like my kids, they didn't have to do anything to be in our family. Like, their birth certificates say that we're their parents now, once those adoptions were finalized. And that just really impacted how I view my relationship with God.
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone has, like we said, like everyone has a different journey, and just seeing the way that God works through, even like there's the logistics, right? Like God was very clearly involved in the logistics here, but
Hmm.
that heart journey is just ultimately like more important. Like what's he doing in our hearts? And that's really encouraging to hear. Yeah, like to hear what he did. Uh, so I'm curious, you didn't go the traditional route. So, like, do you have like did you feel like you were prepared, like equipped? Like, more normally there's like trainings and, all kinds of
Yeah.
things like that. Like how did you feel?
Well, we still had to do certain things. We had to have a home study that was acceptable for private adoption, which is a little different than an agency adoption, but it's just a different order of documents and things. But we met with the social worker several times. And she also met with the birth mothers. And so there was some training and preparation that way.
Did you feel like when now that your kids, well your kids are grown, some of them. So you've been through it. Have you felt like yeah, like have you felt like okay, I get this, like or at least you know where to turn?
Um yes and no. I think um again, like, just learning throughout the adoption, that it's relational at its core. I quickly found other adoptive families. So we have a network of people, and that's been very helpful, especially when the kids were younger. Now that they're older, I feel like more people talk about the trauma that comes with adoption, even a newborn adoption, that they've been in our arms since the very beginning, but there's still a separation that happens from their biological mom, and that affects their brain development. It affects things. So I feel like now people talk about that a little more. And two of my kids, especially, have been in some counseling just to work through some of that identity stuff that comes along with it. I definitely don't think we were prepared for that part, but I'm thankful we found resources to help us.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that on our podcast before, and I think even being prepared, listening to or reading or different things like
Mhm.
all of that, it doesn't always prepare you perfectly for what your scenario will be because you have no idea how it will all actually play out. So it's so important to have a network of trusted people that you can go to. It's
Yeah.
sweet.
And that's parenthood in general,
Yeah,
regardless
true.
of
That's fair.
how they
That's
came
fair.
to your family. I mean, you know, anyone that has multiple kids knows you can parent them exactly the same way and it does not work the same. So, I mean, there's no like handbook for it.
Yeah, that is
Ain't that
so
the truth?
true. Yeah. So when you were working with, each of your different adoptions, as you were working with the attorneys and different things, you had communication with the birth moms while they were pregnant. Did that communication continue? Like, what does that kind of look like today? Do you have quote unquote open
Yeah.
adoptions? What does that look
Yeah.
like for your family?
They definitely look different. I mean, they look different than I think no one knew what they were going to look like. But like one birth mom wanted regular visits, and we had some at the beginning, but don't really now. But I do have communication with them all to some degree, whether that's like a Facebook message or a text or whatever. My oldest has met her birth mom a few times. She was like 6, 8. She saw her a couple different times, and that was good. I think it was good for her to just see that she's a normal person. We like her. She cares about her. I mean, I think it was just good to kind of take a lot of the questions off the table of just the fantasizing type questions.
Mhm.
This person really exists. This is who she is. And um, my other two children's birth moms haven't had quite a stable life since they were born, but I do have relationships with them and parts of their family, which has been good because I love that I got to know them during their pregnancies because now I can tell my kids things about them and I really know them. I spent time with them. So my youngest is getting ready to turn 10, and I think I've had some conversations with her birth mom. I think they may meet pretty soon. So my my daughter Rachel has been wanting to do that. So we're trying to navigate that.
How do you so this is your 3rd. So what are your feelings about this? Like, do you still feel like anxiety or do you feel like
No.
relief or
Um well, I feel relief from the point of like she just has desired this more than my other kids have. It goes back to their personalities are different. They process things differently, and she just really wants to meet her. She'll say that she's been on this for a couple years, and she'll say things like, "Well, what are we doing today? Can we go meet her?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't just this is not the kind of relationship you just drop by." I mean, she lives like an hour-ish away anyway, but like, no, we're not just dropping by her house, like, not that relationship. So, we've been talking through it and what it looks like and what she's like and just what it would mean for the future. Like, we're probably still not hanging out weekly, but we can probably see her again, like just kind of some perspective.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm fine with it happening, and I think it'll help Rachel process things.
Yeah, that's good. I think like so for me, my first son, my oldest, he is adopted through embryo adoption, and we
Mhm.
have a semi-open kind of relationship with his. We call them his genetic parents,
Yeah.
and so and we talk about it very openly, like. He is 4 or almost 4, so he like has little bits of information that he can probably process. But I've
Yeah.
kind of thought like I'm just letting him lead, if he asks a lot of questions and if he wants to meet one day or like whatever that might look like, we'll do whatever we can to facilitate it. And
Mhm.
so it's just interesting because it's like, I don't know. I mean, he may be 18 before he even really has any desire, or maybe he'll be 5. I have no
Right.
idea. But I think it's just, yeah, it's interesting. Then I have adopted twins as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they interact with that. And
Right.
if one shows interest in meeting his, genetic parents, do the others show interest in meeting their birth mom? Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all
Right.
plays out.
Right. My son's birth mom just hasn't been in a place where it has worked out to meet her, but he has gotten to meet a half biological brother and the maternal biological grandpa. Yeah. So he's met a couple relatives, which I feel like for him has been helpful, it's again, I think it just puts aside some of the wondering, it's less
Mhm.
mysterious. So,
Yeah,
um
I think
but
that's
yeah,
good.
it's definitely a hard, I mean, open adoptions are a hard thing to navigate, um and I think going back to the beginning, I think that's part of why I hope that we were pretty naive because we just dove into it. Like we like we weren't jaded enough to like even be super scared, about it. I don't know.
No, that's
So,
such a good point because there's
Yeah.
almost like an effect of like you're over, like we know
yeah.
too much and now we're
Yeah.
scared and like I don't even
Right.
want to do this anymore.
Well, and I mean if just out of context and you're like in the rooms when these other women deliver babies and like it sounds insane like that it would be a I mean, it just sounds like it'd be a crazy situation, which it is to some degree, but it is also like, you know, how God builds our families sometimes. And I don't know. It's just if I had told myself this is what it was gonna look like, I'd been terrified, I think.
Mhm.
But it's just I don't know. With God's leading, I think it's the only way it works for me.
Yeah, that's so good because
Yeah.
I could see a world in which you find out about these birth moms who are some of them, at least one was pretty local to you, to think, like, is this something that is she, coming over for Sunday family dinner every week? Like, what is
Right.
that going to look like? And I think that is a big hesitation for some people when they walk this road to see, like, okay, what is it going to look like? Like, we just have no idea. And it does take a lot of faith to
Yeah.
walk forward and just say, okay, Lord, we're trusting you with, the first part of this process and then
Yeah.
also the rest of it.
Yeah. So 2 of our 3 adoptions were local, and we did have to put in some just boundaries for their sake, and, my husband grew up in Murray, which is not a big town really, and, like, lots of people know lots of people, so we just purposely never used their last names, and we never told we just not that we'd broadcast that information anyway, but, like, having so many local connections, we did, like and we told them this at the time too, like, we wanted a safety net for them, and not that our relatives and friends would bother them, we just didn't want all that, you know, trying to find out who's connected to who, so
Yeah,
we
that
did
is an
put in
interesting
yeah,
dynamic having it be in a
yeah,
small town like that. I'm from a
uh-huh,
smaller town and it's yeah,
yeah,
it's mhm.
yeah,
So what inspired you to write the book?
yeah. Well, pre-kids, I was a newspaper reporter and have a degree in print journalism, and I've always really just process things by writing, um, kind of organize my thoughts that way. as I started staying home with Kate and then the others, I started blogging and just writing. And also around that time, I started like a Facebook support group for adoptive moms where people could just ask questions, and we'd get together for lunch sometimes. Um, and I just was reminded through all that, just the power of sharing our stories and how it helps people feel less alone. I actually wrote the first like small ebook before Rachel was born. And then after Rachel was born, I was like, well, God's still writing the story in our lives. So I updated it and like published a actual paperback book or whatever. In my book about our adoption processes, it's called Peace in the Process. Other adoptive moms tell their stories too, because I mean, like we've talked about, there's so many stories and so many different ways God puts together families. And so other moms I know shared little snippets of their story throughout, as well as my kids' birth moms. So I loved bringing it all together, all the sides.
That's so awesome. What was it like, working with the birth moms of your 3 kids and, like, trying saying, "Okay, I wanna write their
Yeah.
stories," like,
Well,
were they open to that?
I had no idea. Like I wrote most of the book. Just I kept thinking like it'd be really neat to have their input. And I mean their stories are each different,
Mhm.
and they came to adoption for different reasons and ways, and um so I kind of started just talking to him, and I was like, you know, I'll, I'll protect your identity. I'm not gonna not like looking to spread your stories all over the place. So they have different names in the book. And basically I ended up sending them questions, and they typed me or sent me answers back. Just, so they could kind of think about what they wanted to say and how they wanted to say it. So, and then I incorporated that information in the book throughout our story. Um, which I mean, I have a print journalism degree, so like it kind of felt a little like interviewing people, but it was obviously more intimate than that. But that kind of theory is what I was working. That's how I kind of went about it.
Very cool. And do you know if they read the book or not? Any of them?
I don't know, but I gave them books. I don't know if they read them or not, but they
Maybe they
have them.
scanned and found this part where
Yeah,
they were in it.
probably. And it's fairly chronological. I mean, there's some stuff, sibling like, it's not just about like their births. But I mean, it's kind of chronological. So maybe they read their parts, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. So you have the Peace in the Process book, and then you've also written a couple of other books, right?
Yes.
So, what brought those about? And I know that it's not maybe exactly on the topic that we have been talking about, but I think it's still interesting
Yeah.
to hear part of your life
Well,
and
and
your story.
I mean, yeah, and I don't know, it's not too far off. The second book I wrote was called Bringing Home More Than Groceries. It's like different stories about gathering and nourishing people, and about how if we open our home, we're also opening our lives to people. And um, there is some about like your home doesn't have to be perfect to be hospitable, but it's also really just like you can be hospitable wherever you go. You can reach out to friends, just that kind of thing. And a lot of it was inspired by motherhood at the grocery store, because that's where we spent a lot of our lives before Walmart delivered me groceries. And so, but as I just write on my blog and things, and I just sense this theme of hospitality. So, and again, I had some friends share their own stories. So, um, you know, I, and ironically, I published this book on hospitality during COVID, which was not the plan. But at the same time, it reminded me how much we really needed each other after we'd all been separated. So I released it in later 2020, which seems weird, but it also worked. So, um, Yeah. And then
And then your
my
newest
3rd book,
book,
yeah,
yeah.
my newest book is called Created for Communion. It's about how we're designed for biblical friendship, and it goes through different friendships in the Bible, like Jesus's different friends, but also like Ruth and Naomi and Moses and Aaron, and just all these different friends and what we can take from their example of friendship into our lives, and how Jesus is the ultimate friend, and how we can we can teach others about Jesus through our friendships with them. So, kind of a circular idea there.
Yeah, that's really cool, and honestly, that's still relevant for to our
Yeah.
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
We did an episode not that long ago about how sometimes it's hard to make friends as a mom, and then especially an adoptive mom because things are a little bit different and sometimes it's hard to
Yeah.
navigate those conversations. So, that's cool that you also spoke on that.
Yeah, I think the same thing about hospitality. Like, being a mom,
Yeah.
it's harder to have people over and to put a meal on the table for my own family, let alone for
Right.
your family
Right.
too,
Right.
and just like just trying to practice that. I like that wherever you are to
Yeah.
be hospitable.
Yeah. Definitely real life lessons. Nothing that I'm
Yeah.
an expert on. It's just what I've experienced in my own life.
Yeah. I love that you're just, you're blogging and you're writing, like that's how you process things and
Yeah.
you're putting it all together in these themed books. I think that's really sweet.
Yeah.
We
Thank
had
you.
an
Yeah.
episode recently about I think it's been released. Maybe not. It may not have been released yet, but we have an episode on or maybe it was this week, to work or not, like to work or to
Mhm.
stay
Mm,
home. And so I'm curious your take on this because you had a career and then you stayed home, but you also have written some books. So can you speak a
mhm.
little bit about like what went through your mind on
Yeah.
staying home and working?
Yeah. I was dead set on working. I We adopted Kate. I got 6 weeks of leave. Um and I was like convinced I was going back to work. And I did go back to work for a little bit. But we had this plan where she'd sometimes come to work with me and sometimes Greg would work from home, and we would just juggle back and forth, and it did not I was like, this isn't going to work very long. So then I was like, I think I'm just supposed to stay home with her. I think part of it at that time was I knew I worked for a newspaper, and I knew lots of things happened at night, and I knew that if I was going to continue working, it meant like Greg and I were going to constantly be dividing our time, and that just wasn't how I wanted to start out parenthood. Um so anyway, I ended up staying home. It was a whole process to get that worked out. With health insurance, and my husband had just gone out on his own. He's an attorney and he'd just gone out on his own. So there was just lots of variables and unknowns. Um, but I did that, and then I can't really remember. I mean, I kept writing, and I would do things, but then like I don't know. Sometimes I'd help Greg, and we have this rental property. So sometimes I would do stuff with that. Like I just kind of started getting involved in different things that were like jobs, but not like full time go to work jobs. And um, then like adopted Ben, and I would scale back again. So it was always this whole process of just figuring out what I could handle, what made sense for our family. So, um, then when all the kids were in school, I started getting more involved with some jobs at my kids' school, but I've scaled back some of those now so I can focus more on writing. So I feel like it's always this balancing act of what am I supposed to be doing this season of life. So, I definitely have a lot of I don't know what the word, but like I think a lot of people that work full time and they're a mom when they get home. I just know that takes a lot of mental energy to work a regular schedule. So,
Yeah, for sure. I know that we talked a lot about that, like that tension and that juggle of, man, I want to work, I want to, have
yeah.
purpose and meaning in what I'm doing, and like I love to work, I enjoy it, like all of these different things, and then trying to figure out like,
Yep.
okay, what's my priority and how does this work? And
How
all the
much can I
practice.
handle?
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
practical, like, daycare cost and, food like, all the different things. So we talked a lot about that, and, um, so my mom listened to the episode, and she had said, she's like, "I was wondering if you would bring up this point," and I was like, "Oh gosh, what's she gonna say?" Like, I'm kinda getting nervous, and, she's like, "For a lot of the people that are listening to your podcast, not all, but a lot, they come to adoption or foster care because of infertility. So maybe they had a career, but like they were desiring to be a mom, for probably an extended amount of time. Do you think that that affects decisions to stay at home or to keep working?" And I was like, huh, I didn't really like, yeah, we didn't bring that up on our episode. And I was kind of thinking through it. I think it's all dependent. Like
Mhm.
every different situation and circumstance is different, but I do think there's probably a part of that, at least for my story, of the reason I decided to step back from
Mhm.
being in my very corporate job, that I was like, yeah, I wanted this for a long time and now I have
Mhm.
it and I want to be with him as much as I can.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I think that was part of it. Like I was kind of processing through some of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I think that that is probably true.
Yeah.
And I think now part of me wanting to kind of scale back again is like I know how fast it goes. Like I
Yeah.
just moved my daughter into her dorm and my oldest and like I don't know. There's different things that happen in life that are like, oh, it goes so quick. So I think there's all that entangled together for sure.
Yeah, and that's, like, the power of taking time to evaluate, like, where you are, what is going on in life, what your kids
Mhm.
need, what your family needs, like, I think I said it before of, like, when you make a decision, you're not making a decision forever, like, there's very few decisions that are, like, you can never go back, this will never happen again,
Right.
there are those, but, you can evaluate and, like,
Right.
reevaluate and think, like, "How do I step up? How do I scale back?" Those different things just like you've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, that I didn't even think about the infertility thing. That's
Mhm.
an interesting, like, dynamic to that.
Mhm.
And I think it's really cool that you have a profession that is kind of flexible in some regard in
Mhm.
terms of writing. Like, you don't have to write for someone else, like, you can write for
Right.
yourself, and that could be
Right.
a something you do as a hobby just for fun, or
Mhm.
it could be something that you do for money. So
Yeah.
that's kinda nice.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of the things I do for my kids' school is social media and some of the marketing things. So like it's all kind of this, it's all in that same field. It's just
Yeah.
like definitely where I like to be. So yeah.
is there so in the theme of Beyond the Home Study, is there, like, 1 or 2 things that, you know, you're like, "Man, I wish I would have known this," like, in the grand scheme of things, especially now that like, maybe let's just talk about your oldest, she's off in college, and you're like, "Man, I kinda wish I would have known blank."
Hmm.
Something that could encourage our listeners.
Thing I would just say, I wish I would known that, or maybe not even that I'd known, but that I would remembered that God equipped me to be these kids' moms. Like, I think
Mm.
so often we doubt ourselves, or maybe we have a kid whose personality rubs ours, or, whatever. Maybe there's just a hard season with a kid, whatever. We all go through the different things. And I just, I think I too often think I'm ill-equipped to be their mom, but I'm not. I mean, I can't do it alone by any means, but God's given us resources and people and spouse and each other, the other kids in the house, and like we're meant to do this with these kids.
Yeah, that's so good, and it's so cool to see how your story has really played out like that,
Yeah.
like, God brought each of these kids to your family in such miraculous ways and ways that you could not have planned,
No.
and so it's like, "Okay, of course you have to equip me because I this was not part of my plan for my life." But it is, and that's what he's given you, and
Yeah.
it's really beautiful.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank
so
Yeah,
you.
no,
good.
that is such a good reminder, especially because I think that you can get those, like, intrusive thoughts that creep in, being an adoptive mom and not the biological mom of I know I could feel that way, like,
Oh yeah.
well, and so that is a really good reminder, like, no, he put them in our lives. We
Mhm.
are equipped. That's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. Well, I think we're just about wrapping up. So, do you want to share a little bit, Kristen, of where people can find you? I know you have a website, you're on social media. Yeah, anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. My whole website is just built around like if we were all on a porch together, here are things we could share. So I hope it's a place people want to come and be encouraged, and then I can be encouraged also. But it's KristinHillTaylor.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, we will add those links at the bottom of today's episode. So
Okay,
check out those show
thank
notes,
you.
guys. And we'll also add the links to her books, all three of them. So check those out because I think they could all be an encouragement to any of our listeners. And if anything we said today, you guys made you laugh, cry, or feel seen, please share this with a friend. And thank you, Kristen, so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.